I'm Jenni Carlson with Ryan Aber. We're in Norman, where OU has finished out its home slate with a 27-14 victory over Baylor. And Ryan, I mean, victory, yes, but I think this game ended up being a whole lot closer than anyone expected it to be, maybe including Lincoln Riley. This was a weird couple weeks, though, for Oklahoma. How did they get to the point, I guess, first of all, they were actually playing?
Yeah, I think one, the new CDC guidelines of contact tracing certainly helped them out tonight, but they were able to get some players back at both the Wednesday and Friday round of testing. Those went well for the Sooners. You know, we saw some coaches back that we weren't sure if they would be out there. Alex Grinch and Roy Manning being right there among that group. And they were able to cobble together a way to get enough players to play this game, and they were able to do it and clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you talk about cobbling together players. The area where that was most evident was the Sooners secondary. Had several guys missing two starters, including Nick Benito, who doesn't have the secondary, but he was out. Having a lot of heavy rotation guys in that secondary, Ryan, that were unavailable. That would have been a huge issue only a year ago under Alex Grinch in his first year as defensive coordinator. But this year, they were able to make it work. How did they do it?
Well, I mean, you think back to a year ago, and one of the first things that we heard Alex Grinch say was how shockingly thin they were in the secondary. And then to come out there today, they don't have Brendan Radley-Hiles, who started a ton of games for them. They didn't have Trey Norwood till late in the week. He was one of those guys that didn't join them until really late in the week. They were without Pat Fields, their captain, who had played so well of late. They were without Woody Washington, a redshirt freshman corner who had fought his way into the starting lineup and performed really well. So even without those guys and with another guy who barely prepared this week, they were able to throw out Jeremiah Cradell and DJ Graham, guys that had been playing more and more over the last few weeks. They moved Robert Barnes, who had played really well for them at times at safety, didn't quite fit into what Alex Grinch does defensively at safety, so he moved to linebacker after redshirting last year after playing the first 4 games. And they moved him back to safety tonight, and he was in the starting lineup. So they were able to cobble it together. And I think it shows the depth that Alex Grinch is building in that group. And they certainly performed well tonight, although they didn't have to guard for very long because Oklahoma's defensive front really, even without Nick Benito there, really got after Charlie Brewer. The sack numbers weren't massive, but they had him scrambling all night.
Boy, they did, and they also swatted down a bunch of passes. Oklahoma broke up 8 passes as a team tonight. 6 of those were by defensive linemen or linebackers. So unbelievable performance by the front. So lots to like about the defense, especially shorthanded and shorthanded in its preparation as well. On the other side of the ball, the offense, that was a little bit more of a head scratcher, or at least it seemed to be, because they weren't noticeably affected by quarantines. They weren't missing a ton of guys, at least not the mainstays that you would have thought, oh, if this guy's out or that guy's out, they're in trouble. They didn't have those obvious guys missing, but really weren't as sharp as we've seen them. Lincoln Riley said maybe the reason is their coach, him, might not have coached them as well as he should have this week. Maybe that's to be understood, Ryan, because he had a lot of other things going on, but this offense definitely did not look itself tonight.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley talked about the practice preparation this week and his approach to it, and his thought was just sort of limp along and make sure you get to Saturday and you're able to play. And he said maybe some of the focus went off of performance in what they were able to do. And it showed. I mean, this was the lowest offensive output in the Lincoln Riley era. I mean, the last time that Oklahoma got fewer offensive yards than they got tonight, they got 269 yards tonight, was 2014 against Texas when they had, 232. Only rushed for 76 yards tonight. Baylor made it really, really difficult on Ramondre Stevenson and company, although Ramondre Stevenson wound up having a pretty good game when you consider the catches that he made out of the backfield. I think it was 5 catches for a touch under, right around 50 yards for him, with 50 yards rushing on top of that, and recovered an onside kick for him.
Yeah.
But the fewest rushing yards they'd had since, I think, 2016 against Houston, when they had that 70. So an uncharacteristically off night for the Sooners. And yeah, maybe they were affected by quarantine stuff, by contact tracing, but the only guys really that were missing that were regular rotation guys were Austin Stogner, who's obviously a big key for them, makes a lot of big catches, but they were without him a couple weeks ago in Bedlam, and they were still able to perform well offensively. And then Mikey Henderson, a freshman who's, we talk about those freshmen in the secondary that have had their playing time ramp up over the last few weeks. That's been Mikey Henderson on the offensive side. He's done some really good things, but they didn't have him for a lot of the first part of the year, and they were still able to move the ball offensively. So I think part of it was OU really struggling offensively, both to protect and to make do with what they had. Although, heck, I thought TJ Pledger probably played his best game since Ramondre Stevenson came back. But and then protecting on the offensive line was an issue as well. But Baylor has a pretty good defense. I mean, we knew that. Obviously, Dave Aranda's background is so much in the defense. But the most important thing for the Sooners tonight was just, one, get this game played, because they need to play one of their last 2 games to be eligible for the Big 12 title game. And 2 was just win it however you can. And Jenni, I think that's what you are going to touch on in your Monday column, that the important thing with everything that they've been through is just finding a way to win and make that Big 12 title game.
Yeah, and they did. They're in that Big 12 title game in a couple weeks against Iowa State. It'll be a rematch of that game from earlier this year up in Ames, a game that everybody knows. Iowa State won, came back. Oklahoma sort of in the midst of those early season struggles that they had. So they'll be in that title game going for another Big 12 championship. But with all of the things going on, for them to be able to find a way to win by 2 scores. I mean, let's not undersell the fact that they win by 2 scores, and even though it was a little tighter and closer for comfort than people may have wanted, I don't know if anybody ever felt like, oh my gosh, Oklahoma's going to lose this game.
Well, no, because Oklahoma's defense was just playing lights out all night. I mean, heck, Baylor's best scoring opportunities, that they weren't able to capitalize on, and they got a couple of scores there late, but their best scoring opportunities came on missed field goal drives early. One of them was a sustained drive where they picked up a couple of 3rd downs, even picked up a 4th down. The other one was, no thanks to their offense, they were put in a really bad position, and they were able to hold up and keep Baylor to a long field goal try that once again fell short. And then Dave Aranda decided no more of that. We're not going to kick any more 46-yard field goals because there's no point in it. The next drive, they wound up at the same spot on 4th down and went for it. And OU got I believe that was a Trey Norwood interception. So tonight, overall, a positive. Just get through it. The defense performed really well. A fantastic performance by them, especially some guys like TJ Graham, first career interception. Trey Norwood, his 3rd interception of the season, continues to be a big redemption story for him after missing last year with the torn ACL. And Isaiah Thomas comes back in a big way with 2.5 sacks. I think he was OU only had 3 sacks of Brewer on the night, and Isaiah Thomas was right there in all 3 of them, 2 of them solo. So, a really strong performance for Alex Grinch's group. The offense can take their time to regroup a little bit. For West Virginia, a game that's going to happen, according to Lincoln Riley, which I thought was interesting how strong he came out in support of that after we've seen the ACC make some changes. There'd been some talk of some changes in some other leagues to avoid that, and there was some talk that maybe the Big 12 would do the same thing with Iowa State being off next week. Maybe they go ahead and wipe out OU West Virginia. But in this season, when the whole point of it was to try to play as many games as you can and squeeze them in, you got to play this game. And I absolutely agreed with what Lincoln Riley said there in support of going to West Virginia next week.
Well, we'll have a lot more about that Big 12 matchup, but we'll have a lot more about the West Virginia game because that's first on the docket next Saturday up in Morgantown, that rescheduled game against the Mountaineers. We'll have your coverage of all of that, plus all of our game coverage from here on the last home game here in Norman for the 2020 season. So be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at oklahoman.com and every day in the Oklahoman.